Ella es Natalie Marcos, especialista en medicina antiedad y medicina mente-cuerpo. Reconocida nutrióloga funcional, conferencista y escritora. Ella te invita a resetear, reparar y regenerar. Las 3 R's, un podcast de Natalie Marcos.
Bienvenidos a un episodio maravilloso de las 3 R's. Siempre tenemos la capacidad de reparar, restaurar, regenerar nuestro cuerpo y nuestra mente. Y hoy vamos a hablar de cómo podemos reparar nuestro ADN. Y para esto tengo una invitada maravillosa, una mujer doctora, especialista en medicina naturopática, naturopathic doctor, que ella se ha dedicado su vida a la investigación, sobre todo en lo que tiene que ver con la metilación, el ADN. Ella estuvo en Atlanta, tiene un posgrado en nutrición bioquímica, en investigación y publicación, sobre todo en el libro de texto del Instituto de Salud Funcional, el IFM, y además trabajó con el laboratorio de Metametrix en Atlanta. Tiene su clínica en Connecticut, es escritora, no solo de artículos científicos, sino de este maravilloso libro que se llama Younger You, y su recetario que se complementa con su programa de Younger You. Y bueno, podría hablar muchísimo de ella, que trabajó en un libro que yo tengo, que es el libro de Laboratory Evaluation for Integrative and Functional Medicine del IFM, que es un libro de texto que todos los médicos tendríamos que tener. Y tiene este cookbook nuevo que se llama Broths and Healing Tonics, que habla de los caldos de hueso para sanarnos. Y bueno, bienvenida, welcome, Dr. Cara Fitzgerald.
Thank you so much, Natalie. It's really a pleasure to be with you. And I'm so thrilled to bring this to Latin America. So I'm just really grateful for your interest in my work.
We're very interested in your work. So, ella escribió un masterpiece, que es este libro, y le quiero preguntar hoy, ¿qué tiene que ver y cuál es la diferencia del epigenoma y el genoma en nuestra salud? What is the difference today with talking about epigenome and genome in our DNA, in our health?
Yeah, it's so important. And we're in a revolution, a scientific revolution. So it wasn't long ago that we really believed our genes were our destiny. So if mom and dad were sick, if our grandparents were sick, whatever their fate would be ours. Our genetic material dictated our fate. When we mapped the human genome out in the early 2000s, in about 2003, we realized we had a lot less genes than we thought. We have about 23,000 of them. And the huge moment of kind of scientific epiphany was that the genes that we thought drove disease, in fact, it wasn't the case. So we thought that we would have a roadmap to identifying genes causing heart disease, genes causing cancer, genes causing diabetes, genes causing obesity, dementia, etc. In fact, that was not the case. So mapping the human genome led us to thinking about how our genes are turned on and off, what genes are expressed. That's the field of epigenetics, and that's where my focus and research has been. It's where lifestyle, how we're living, how we're eating, how we're breathing, how we're being, how we're connecting with others, our experience in the world influences which genes are on and off. And it's this, and I know this is where you sit in your work, it's this world that really dictates how well we live.
True, and that it's our responsibility to turn those genes off. Like they say, no, the bullets of the pistol, no, it's our genetics, but we are going to activate them. And when you talk about this, how can methylation impact our health, our DNA, and in an easier way? They talk about methylation and the word just makes you confused.
Yes. So when we talk about epigenetics, epi is above, genetics are genes. When we talk about what turns genes on and off, the key way that we regulate genes is through something called methylation. There are a lot of ways we turn genes on and off, but really the most important is this biochemical process called methylation. And really simply, it's a carbon with 3 hydrogens. It's a very simple molecule. We all learned about it in school. And when it looks in the scientific literature, it looks like a lollipop. And when you see a lot of these lollipops on your DNA, that gene is inhibited. So methyl groups, very simply, they get put on certain genes, they shut that gene off, they can be removed, or when there are just a few of the lollipops on a gene, that gene can be turned on. And so that's DNA methylation. Simply put, it's a key way we turn genes on and off. What else do I want to say? It's a very nutrient-dense process, but let me stop there for a second and just see if you have any questions on that.
Yes. Estaba preguntando cuál es la importancia de la metilación en nuestro cuerpo y cómo escuchamos la palabra metilación y nos angustiamos y no sabemos lo que es, ¿no? Este proceso tan importante que ocurre todos los días. ¿Cómo nos afecta la metilación en la salud y en nuestras hormonas? How does methylation impact our hormones, for example?
That's a really good question. So we methylate genes. We turn genes on and off using those red lollipops. We also use methylation to clear our body of or metabolize out and eliminate hormones. We use methylation to make sure that we're removing our estrogen in the safest way possible. So we can have more toxic estrogens, or we can have healthy, toxic sort of pro-cancer estrogens, or we can methylate them and make them healthier. We also use methyl groups to make dopamine, an incredibly important neurotransmitter, to make adrenaline, our get up and go, to make really important peptides like acetylcholine, which is essential for memory and very low in dementia. So methylation is this fundamental process, again, this carbon and 3 hydrogens, that is active in every single cell of the body all of the time, doing incredibly, incredibly important work. It's as fundamental as breathing. You know, it's as fundamental as oxygen keeping us alive. Only we don't feel it the way we feel when we're not breathing or can't get enough oxygen, but it's as fundamental, as essential to life as breathing.
You know, what happens when I have compromised my methylation genetically? For example, I have a SNP in the methylfolate conversion. I have a methylation in the COMT, you know, in my hormone. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so that's a great question. I think, it's you know, it's not cut and dry, so it's not clear. Everybody's individual, so you can have a SNP or you can have a mutation in your COMT and be able to methylate your estrogen fine. This could be because you are eating well, you're exercising. So if you're doing right in your life, your COMT gene is likely going to be able to function. If you're giving it the ingredients to function and you're living a good life, it's not going to impact you profoundly. You might have some increased risk for hormone imbalances, for estrogen dominance. Maybe you have some increased risk for uterine fibroids. So there's certain conditions that might be at issue, and you may have to give it a little bit more attention. But if you're living a good life, you should be fine. If MTHFR, of course, is a huge one that everybody's aware of, and this helps us make the red lollipop. The MTHFR actually is an enzyme key to making the carbon and 3 hydrogens, the methyl group. When that is not functioning, or when you have a negative variant, it's true that you may not be able to methylate as well. But again, you're going to have some functionality of that gene. If you didn't have any functionality of that enzyme, you just simply wouldn't be alive. So you absolutely have some functionality, and, you know, living a good life, again, is going to support that. You might need some extra nutrients. There is some research suggesting that people with the MTHFR mutation may age a little bit faster, but amazingly enough, there's research showing that correcting methylation shut that down. So they were able to reverse aging just by correcting it with nutrients.
It's interesting what you're saying. I'm studying some cases of migraine that I didn't know it was associated with this mutation of folic acid, MTFSH. And after I gave them the supplement of folic acid, the migraines went down. So it's important because we don't even know how it impacts in different people, you know?
Yes, that's right. And, you know, back to your point regarding estrogen metabolism, the COMT mutation, there's an interesting case study a friend of mine shared with. He's a psychiatrist. And of course, we use folate in depression, and he gave her folate for her depression, and her endometriosis was resolved. So she had an estrogen imbalance that was driven by that mutation. So when he had treated her depression, her endometriosis was better. I know, isn't that? It's a...
Oh, okay. Let me ask you more things. ¿Cómo afecta la comida en la metilación. How does food, and what are the foods we should be taking every day for methylation?
So it's an amazingly nutrient-dense process. There are many different foods. The nutrients that are sort of the most popular, the rock stars of methylation, if you will, include B12, folate, as we've been talking about, betaine, which is an ingredient in beets, really important, choline that we can get in liver or we can get in eggs. We can also get in mushrooms. What else? Even minerals like potassium, magnesium, zinc, other B vitamins, thiamine and riboflavin are important in this cycle. Even DHA from fish, an oil in fish, will help with the methylation cycle. So it's a nutrient-dense process to make that carbon and 3 hydrogens. All of those nutrients are essential. And then there's a class of nutrients that help regulate where that carbon and 3 hydrogens go, where the methylation, where the methyl donor actually goes. We want, when we're thinking about DNA and turning genes on and off, we want the right genes on and the bad guy genes off. I mean, it's really that simple. We want anti-inflammatory genes, healthy genes, genes associated with, ideal metabolism, et cetera, et cetera. We want those genes on, and then we want genes associated with disease, driving cancer, et cetera, inflammation. We want those genes inhibited. There's a class of nutrients that we call methylation adaptogens that seem to direct where methylation happens on the DNA. Together, we call them all epinutrients. So the methyl donors, the B12 and folate, et cetera, are epinutrients, and these methylation adaptogens are also epinutrients.
That's where the green tea extract, no?
That's exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right. Yes.
I read my book. I did my homework.
Cool. Yeah, green tea, there's so many nutrients that are epinutrients that we can be eating all of the time. Green tea, curcumin and turmeric, rosemary, peppers, berries, fruits, colorful fruits and veggies, greens, etc., nuts and seeds, mushrooms, again. There's just so many foods out there that will help drive ideal gene expression.
It's interesting what you're saying, because I think we have lost our resiliency to stress. And now we have to eat these foods that have adapted over the years, like the shiitake mushrooms, no, like the maca, like all of those that have survived in the worst weather conditions. And now we have to make our body.
Yeah. That's exactly right. That's really a cool point that you bring up. These nutrients are packed when they grow up in stressed conditions. I mean, one of my favorites I talk about in the book is something that's like new in the United States, Himalayan tartary buckwheat. We've just started to grow it here in the United States. It's from the Himalaya. It's from the mountains. It grows in such rough environment, like little soil, bad soil, really challenging, adverse conditions. And because of that, it's packed with these epinutrients to help it survive. And as you can imagine, eating those nutrients are incredibly beneficial for us. So, really good point.
Entonces estamos hablando de la capacidad de los alimentos para metilar. Hay unos que ayudan a la metilación y otros que son donadores de metilación. Y además hay otros que son los adaptógenos, que van a ayudar a estas rutas, a dirigir las rutas metabólicas, como lo que estamos hablando hoy. Muy interesante. When you did an experiment on your book and on your trials, you talk about that you only gave Lactobacillus plantarum to produce folic acid and the green powder. Why? Why did you only use those two, and what is your concern on supplements?
Yeah, good question again. So, we did a very folate B12. We did a methyl donor and methylation adaptogen rich diet. So the diet was packed with all of those, and then we added the Lactobacillus plantarum and then greens powder. So really more epinutrients in a powder form. The reason that we stayed away from supplements in the trial is that we wanted to study diet and lifestyle specifically influencing gene expression. So that was thing one. We really wanted to study diet and lifestyle, and I did not want it to be a supplement study. But the other piece is that when we take high-dose long-term supplements, there's some suggestion in the literature that we could inhibit negatively gene expression. So there's some suggestion in the literature that folate and B12, given as isolated supplements, may increase the risk of cancer in certain vulnerable populations, and in particularly people who are older.
I've read that. You know, sometimes when I do cancer, I don't give them folic acid because of that you don't know. It's very interesting. Okay.
And I would say of those, folic acid is the big player there. That's the one that has the most research behind it. But let me just kind of nuance this. If you're going to prescribe folate, because sometimes we have to give people a supplement, sure, right? You were talking about your hormone patients, and I was referring to mine, or depression, et cetera. I mean, there's some times when we absolutely need a supplement. If you give the supplement with those epinutrients, the green tea, the turmeric, the quercetin, the resveratrol, et cetera, all of those important nutrients that seem to be able to direct where that methylation is happening, I believe that would be the safer way to do it. Yeah.
Okay. Hablamos de edad biológica y del reloj de Hubbard, que es un plan, un programa para revertir la edad biológica, que también tiene que ver con su libro. When you talk about the clock, that you participate and you changed a little bit of the Hubbard clock to reverse bioaging. How did you do that? What's your program based on this?
Very exciting. Very, very exciting. Wow. Our first interest in looking at DNA methylation using a diet and lifestyle, our first entry into this was we were actually thinking about cancer, the folate and cancer risk. That was our first foray into creating our program. But what was it? Because at the time that we were designing our study, there were no studies showing that biological age could be reversed. None. And this was 2018. No studies on it. So we had the biological age clock, and people were certainly interested in it. Scientists were using it. And the biological age clock looks at patterns of DNA methylation. So it's looking at gene expression to see how fast you're aging. Biological age is the rate at which your body is aging. Chronological age is the number of birthdays you've celebrated. Pretty soon, we're not going to really care about the number of birthdays we've celebrated, which is fine with me. We're going to be really interested in the rate of our body's aging. That will be the more important number. So we had this biological age clock back in 2013. People were using it in research, but there was zero evidence that humans could reverse biological age. In 2019, when our study was still being conducted, the very first study was published out of Washington or California. The TRIM study, a scientist named Greg Fay was able to show biological age reversal in a group of just 9 men, given growth hormone injections, metformin, and some other interventions. So a pretty aggressive trial, a year long. They were able to reverse biological age, and it was this huge deal. I mean, I can't even tell you, the scientific community just stood in silence and wonder that we could reverse bioage. It was extraordinary. They were featured in the top tier journals all over the world. Our study came out just after that. We published in 2021. We were the second or third study to show that you could reverse biological age. The difference and kind of the extraordinary finding in our study was that we did it in 8 weeks' time, and we didn't use growth hormone. We didn't use any drugs. We didn't use any supplements even, except for the probiotic and the greens powder. And we were able to reverse biological age by over 3 years as compared to our control group using our diet and lifestyle formula. So we used something, as you just mentioned, we used the first generation clock. It's called the Horvath clock. It's named after Steve Horvath, who's a scientist out of UCLA, University of California in Los Angeles. He was the guy who discovered that you could measure biological aging looking at gene expression, looking at DNA methylation. He's really the guy who discovered it and put it on the map. And I think one day he'll have the Nobel for his work. Yeah,
it's true. I am measuring the biological age in my office, with telomerase activation.
Oh, you do? Good.
The length. I do the methylation. I do the immune senescent cells.
Oh, awesome. Good.
And also the DUN, the rate of the DUN rate.
Yeah. Fabulous.
And it's interesting because that's what you're saying. It doesn't matter if I'm 51. I want to be in my biological age. I'm 46, so I'm doing the right thing in my lifestyle, which is, you know, what we talk about in your book. It's not only what you eat, sleep, connections, life, passion for life, enjoy, have a motivation, have good connections. It's like everything, energy.
Yes.
And when you talk about these senolytics, do you recommend senolytics like in supplements like the spermidine, NMN, or you talk about senolytics in food, or both?
Yeah, by the way, that's awesome. If I am in Mexico City, I'd love to visit your clinic. I'm thrilled that you're doing such.
We do everything. We do hormones, ozone, chelation, sauna, infrared bed.
That's amazing.
The first one 25 years ago who brought into Mexico functional medicine.
Good for you. Jeez, that is just so cool.
And they were like 2 pounds, and 1 kilo. And they were in the hospital for 3 months. And I went to an osteopath in San Diego 25 years ago. Imagine, I was like the crazy in Mexico. And I started doing all these changes in my babies. And it was incredible how their neurological development, their low muscle tone, and all the sickness, they were very immune suppressed. They got sick every month, with fevers and seizures. And how food changes, that was my first approach to this.
Amazing. Wow. And then you brought it to Mexico City, and now you're bringing it to like all of Latin America. That is huge. God, it's just really, really exciting.
Thank you.
What was the question?
Okay, los senolíticos, que son estos suplementos que ayudan a disminuir la edad biológica, cambiar la edad biológica, que son en alimentos y suplementos. Do you recommend supplements or foods in senolytics? I'm sorry about that story.
That's okay. No, that's such an impactful story. I mean, that's how we change the health trajectory in the world. It's through those stories. Senolytics are essential, obviously. They are essential. In the book, I cover the food nutrients. You can take them as supplements. I have no problem with that. I take a little extra quercetin. I take a little extra resveratrol. So I think that beyond that, I talk a little bit about rapamycin and some of the drug senolytics, but I think a food-forward approach is where we all want to start. We can certainly layer medication on top of that if we're interested, but if we don't have the diet and lifestyle component in there, we're really not going to benefit broadly from the drug senolytic agents that are being used. NMN, I think, is great. We didn't study it, so I can't really speak to it from from a research perspective, but I can say anecdotally in our practice where people are prescribed the Younger You program, and then we'll give them other nutrients like NMN or alpha-ketoglutarate or some of the kind of sexy nutrients being used in the longevity space. We see in some people really good outcome with them. Not everybody, but in some. So I think that there's a place for them.
Para terminar, me gustaría saber su opinión sobre el ayuno intermitente y cómo la metilación afecta la microbiota. To finish, and don't take so much of your time that I could be with you, like squeezing you for 15 days in a row and loving every word. You're so clear, you're so punctual. Thank you for being like that, because that helps the audience. What is your approach to intermittent fasting, restriction calorie, and the microbiome, How does the microbiome and the methylation work together? And I think it's very important.
So important. Okay, so intermittent fasting, we had a gentle intermittent fasting structure in our program, just 12 hours eating, 12 hours fasting. We wanted it to be broadly adoptable. We didn't want anybody to have a difficult time with it. I think the research on intermittent fasting is really solid. I think it's good. I think it's important. I think we need to be consistent. So you need to pick a window that you can actually achieve. And you have to make sure, so 12 hours on, 12 hours off, everybody in our practice, everybody in my clinic is able to do that. There's very few people who can't. More than that is appropriate, but you need to make sure that you're getting adequate nutrition. So I would not do a more aggressive window unless you've got nutrition support. Somebody smart who's making sure you're ingesting adequate amounts of food, and that when you're not able to, that you're taking them with supplements. There are many people in the States who are doing just one meal a day, and I know we will see a lot of malnourished individuals. I have no doubt in my mind. In one meal, you're not able to get all of the nutrients that your body requires unless I just don't, it would just be very hard.
That's a very smart point that you're saying. Very smart.
So we want to be careful about that. I mean, one of the things I just published on was doing a Younger You program, high protein. So we know that we need muscle mass as we age. We know we need muscle mass for longevity. If you're fasting and eating only one meal a day, you're going to have a hard time achieving the amount of protein that you need to keep good muscles. So I just wrote about it in a blog on how I'm thinking about doing it. So I'm doing a few days high protein and then a few days all of my Younger You nutrient targets. But these are just really important questions that we have to think about and understand. People go extreme. People move into fasting and can do it in such a way that it becomes damaging. So I think the research on it is good. I think it's an incredibly important tool. I think it's one that we all need to be leaning on. However, we need to do it with intelligence.
And what about the last question, methylation and microbiome in the gut?
The microbiome, like it does everywhere else, it really plays a huge role in regulating gene expression and methylation in particular. We have not yet even began to understand the depth at which our microbes dictate genes being on and off. We're just scratching the surface. In the book and in our research study, we gave Lactobacillus plantarum because it can increase folate, and we did. So a healthy microbiome will make folate, it'll make B12, it'll make biotin, riboflavin, and on and on. A healthy microbiome will make a multivitamin for us. And we saw that in our study. But beyond just making the methyl donor nutrients, the secondary compounds that are gut bugs, when they metabolize our food, those secondary compounds play a huge role in gene expression. So taking care of our gut, is essential to longevity and healthy genetic expression.
Yeah, because we thought that the polyphenols were good for, protection as a cell, for oxidative stress. And now we know that no, they actually work directly from the gut to the liver to the detoxification of the estrobolome, not so systemically.
Yeah, they're actually, so a lot of them, not all of them, but many of them are transformed into different compounds that then are absorbed systemically and influence. And yeah, certainly the liver is a big place that they're doing their heavy lifting, but they're also regulating gene expression. So even beyond the liver, they're influencing what genes are on and off, like really potently, actually.
How would you like to finish this podcast? Like saying a phrase, advice, something that you want my audience to, to assimilate, like stay with something that is you, whatever you want. This is your house, this is you're comfortable to feel secure in this place, whatever you want.
I would love everyone to understand epinutrients, what epinutrients are. These are the nutrients that when we eat them, they regulate gene expression. They turn good genes on, bad genes off. We need to have every forkful that goes into our mouth packed with epinutrients. And so that's what I would leave you with. And I hope that gets you interested in looking at my book. I'd be happy to give you an epinutrient guide if you want to translate it into Spanish, and people can have a nice list of epinutrients every day. Yeah,
Bravo.
That would be perfect.
Thank you so much, my dear Cara, for taking this time, for helping people, for making such profound transformation in giving the food its power. We have lost that. Now we have to make our food is our ally, not our enemy, and we have to, change this mindset.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you so much for reaching out to me. It's just been great to connect with you, Natalie.